I took off my shoes, felt my feet on the ground, and my life changed. The next day when I went to teach my class, I couldn't put my shoes on. And I said, we're not going to put our shoes on. We're going to take them off and we're going to move. We're not going to exercise and we're not going to jump up and down. But this is 1981. Everybody looked at me like I was nuts.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the Nia Dancing Through Life Community Spotlight. My name is Christina May Wolf, and I am your host and guide on a tour through the stories of the global Nia community. Now, on this episode, we'll be doing something a little bit different, and I am very excited and thrilled to welcome our Nia founder, Debbie Rosas. Debbie, I'm so glad that you're here.
Well, you know what? Where else would I be? This is my home, it's my life, and to be in the spotlight, well, that's a good thing.
Absolutely. So Debbie, normally I begin these interviews with the invitation to tell us your Nia story. Now, Nia is your story. So I want to back up even a little bit further and invite you to share your Debbie story from childhood all the way up until before you created Nia. Tell us your story.
Well, there's a lot of story that you can read about, but when you say, tell us your Debbie story, I love the invitation to go into that little girl that, as my grandmother will tell you, when she was babysitting me at about, I think I was 2.5 or 3, I put on her high heels. And in my underpants and her handbag and her high heels, I went for a walk down Clayton Road, which is a very busy road. My parents were off traveling somewhere, and Grandma was babysitting Debbie. Grandma gets a telephone call, and it's from Nettie, her friend. And Nettie says, Alda, don't you love their names back then? Alda, do you know where Debbie is? And Alda says, yeah, she's up in the front room. And Nettie says, no, she's walking down Clayton Road in your high heels with her handbag. I had decided to go out on a little adventure. And of course, I wanted to dress for it. So I think that was my first introduction into clothes matter, the shoes and the handbag. I didn't get in trouble. My grandmother was thrilled that I was okay. And I remember just thinking there's something wonderful about going off on a journey by yourself. My relationship with my grandparents was one of the most wonderful relationships I had. My grandfather, his name was Griff, and I adored Griff. What was really unique about my grandfather is he came from a very rich family back in the day. And he actually went to college for an art degree. Now, he was not your ordinary painter, even though he ended up painting houses. This was a man that could paint something like the Sistine Chapel. Fast forward to my first wedding to George, who I'd known since I was 13. I get married in the Greek Orthodox Church where my grandfather had painted the ceiling. Who could ever imagine? So I had a wonderful relationship with my grandfather who always encouraged me to draw. When you think about all the little pieces fitting together and having these pivotal moments in your life, going off on that journey by myself and not being afraid, and having a grandfather who was an artist, and then add to that having parents that were adventurous. My mother was 19 when she met my dad in World War II in London. They went out 6 times before they were married. My dad saw her in a pub, walked over to her, and he said, I'm going to marry you. And he did. So both of my parents were very magical people. They kind of led, even though a very practical life, it was always around money, practical around money, they also led a very mysterious and adventurous life. So I got to be a part of that, and I got to see that. Watching my mother survive by being creative. I would say we were fairly poor when we were growing up, so my mother made everything. Stitched it to the very last minute so that it would last. she could make something beautiful out of anything. So as a child, I grew up watching somebody use their hands and make things. If something broke in our house, my dad would put us in the car, we'd all go to the library and get a book and sit down and figure out how to do the plumbing. And we would get down on the floor and we'd figure out how to do the plumbing together. So a lot of practical and then also a lot of creative things. But one thing that my parents instilled in me was beauty and the importance of beauty. That no matter what you have, my mom always said, beauty's a responsibility. To keep things beautiful. You're given a gift of a body, keep it beautiful. You're given the gift of a house, keep it beautiful, or a yard, or a pair of shoes. And so that was always instilled in us. Watching my dad as a salesman in the car, driving away for days and then coming home, and really watching the struggle that he went through to put food on our table. He sometimes would sleep in the car so that he could save money and buy Christmas presents. I mean, it was a real thing for my parents to provide. So I would say I was really, really lucky. I had a good childhood, and like everybody, it carried with it some traumas. 5, being sexually abused by a doctor and almost being pulled into a car one time, attacked by a man. And you know, I've had my things that I've had to get over to do my personal trauma work around so that I could inhabit my body. And I think the gift for me of having learning disabilities, everybody could read about it. I had a severe lisp. I couldn't read, and I had to go to special remedial classes. I had to figure it out. How can I live in this body, and how can I function? How do I think? That was a great gift looking back on that journey that at that time I thought was so horrible. I felt so victimized by my body and by life. And yet after having 2 kids and then seeking for a way to feel better, and that whole story about going to a gym and moving my leg and feeling, what is this feeling? Well, it was the blast of inspiration, the sensation of vitality. And then how I went to an exercise class, Sandy Donegan in Sausalito, California, and music went on, I started moving, and I felt the same sensation, and then my voice saying, you're going to create a program that uses no machines for people to move. And I went, are you talking to me? And the rest is just part of that Debbie that puts on her high heels, now it's a pair of boots, and her handbag, and goes out on that journey every single day.
Debbie, thank you for sharing your story. There's so much in there. And going all the way back to your grandparents and your parents, it seems that you've had so many role models from the very beginning of living an adventurous, exploratory, creative life, and also the tenacity of finding the way. Despite the twists and turns and challenges of life, it seems that that was an example that was set for you and prepared you to step through all of the things that you have been through in your life and then into the creation of this extraordinary work.
Yeah, there was no option in my house. There was, what do you mean you can't do it? There was no, and there was no can't. It was, you get in there and you figure it out. My parents said you could do anything that you want to do. And for a kid who couldn't read, whose algebra teacher said, well, she's not very smart, but at least she could draw. That kind of encouragement is so important. And I feel blessed with that. Not every child gets that. Understanding now scientifically how our internal environment and external environment can actually shape who we are, I feel very blessed.
So you took us to the moment where you began to explore exercise and felt that magic of movement in your body. Could you share how you stepped into creating your business, the Bod Squad, and how you stepped into becoming a movement fitness instructor?
It was not conscious. It truly was divine intervention. You know, I struggled with postpartum depression after both children. Had my first baby at 21, another one at 25. I didn't even know who I was, you know, much less taking care of another human being. And I really was, in many ways, very disconnected from my body, from the felt sense of connecting to life. I don't think I was really in my body. So for me, that moment when I realized that emotionally something was going on and I was concerned. And I remember I went to the doctor and he gave me, I don't know, something like Darvon, something. I came home, I took one, knocked me out, as you can imagine, with 2 children, and I'm passed out on the couch. And I realized, okay, that doesn't work. And I also grew up as a Christian Scientist. My grandmother was Christian Science, my dad was Jewish, my mother was Episcopalian. I had a triad of religion, and I got all of it. But Christian Science was a piece that I personally always aligned with. I loved the idea that I could heal myself and that my body could heal. I just thought that was so cool. So when I went to that gym, it was a ladies' spa, all pink, all gold, with one of the things you stand in front of where it kind of beats the fat off you. I mean, it was crazy making. And I put my foot in one of those little straps and moved my leg up and down. I was there to lose weight. I thought that the problem was the weight. I thought, if I could lose the weight, this thing that I was feeling inside that was making me depressed would go away. So I do the one leg, I stand up and I go, whoa, I feel better. What is that? Then I decide, well, maybe it'll happen again. So I did the other leg. And I stood up. Instead of going on the rest of the tour to learn about the machines, I said, you know what? I need to go sit for a minute. And I sat in the sauna and I just kept asking, what was that sensation? What was it that happened that I moved my body? And I could have such a profound change in my emotional being. I felt happy. So I went home and it kind of haunted me. Well, as life would have it, I was selling my house at that time and I was selling it myself because we needed every penny. And a woman came in to buy the house. Her name was Barbara Brown. And I told her about the spa, and she told me about her exercise class. And I honestly didn't even know what exercise was. She says, would you like to go to the class? I go, yeah. So we go to the class, and as I said before, the music came on, I started moving, and I got that feeling again. I have always had a great relationship with my voice. Once I realized that the voices outside telling me that there was something wrong with me were making me feel bad about myself. And then I started listening to the voice inside me, which was friendly. By developing a relationship with that voice, I realized there's so much wisdom in me, encouragement in me, comfort in me, and wisdom. So when I heard that voice, when I was walking to the car with Barbara and it said, you're going to create an exercise program, I didn't go up and fluff it off. I went, oh, wow. And I let it hang in the field. I just let it hang. I didn't push it away. And that's been something of an extraordinary skill that I was given at an early age. Don't push away the voice. Let it hang out in the field. You don't necessarily have to do anything with it, but it's there for a reason. And so the next few days, I kept hearing the voice. And I called Barbara and I said, Barbara, based on what I know about the body from my art studies and drawing and working as an art illustrator for a while at the Missouri Institute of Psychiatry, I said, with what you know, she had a degree in nutrition. I said, with what you know, I think we could do something really good. What do you think if we do something like Sandy was doing, but we do it a little different? And she said, yeah. So I said, well, if you want to do it, you're going to have to quit your job. I kid you not, she walked into her job that day and quit. And the next day, she and I, again, went on a journey. And for a year, we went to the library, we researched fitness and health so that what we were designing could be good. Now, it was high-impact aerobics, not as high probably in the beginning, but then when we went to see what Nia Founder was doing, we went, we're not hurting him enough. That actually came out of our mouth. So over time, we said we weren't going to start a program until we had like 8 routines. So we have the 8 routines, And here we go with our little tiny boom box in to teach our first class. Of course, it was 4 people, and they were all my family. This was really right when aerobics was beginning, and it was really a Judy Shepherd Miss It Jazzercise. It was the beginning. And we kept at it. So fast forward 6 years later, and we ended up having 50 teachers and over 100 classes a week. I ended up having 2 studios, one in a shopping center, one at a private tennis club, which is where Carlos, the male instructor for the Bod Squad, comes into the picture. But 6 years later, I'm looking for a way to honor the students who've been working out with me, and that's when I decided to call a martial art dojo to find out about the belt system. The martial artists invited me to come, and I thought, who can I take of all these 50 teachers? There was one guy, so I said, Carlos, do you want to go? He came, and we walked in. I took off my shoes, felt my feet on the ground, and my life changed. The next day when I went to teach my class, I couldn't put my shoes on, and I said, we're not going to put our shoes on, we're going to take them off, and we're going to move. We're not going to exercise, and we're not going to jump up and down. But this is 1981. Everybody looked at me like I was nuts. Now, you asked me about a business. How did I start a business? I didn't, and herein lies the problem. The business grew into a business. I had no business skills, tremendous amount of passion. I kind of knew how to work with a ledger, how to balance things, how to find an accountant. Had I known then what I know now, I would have kept the Bod Squad business, and I would have differentiated and started something else. I didn't even know what the word differentiated meant. And that was a mistake. Literally overnight, I lost my entire business. The 50 teachers thought I was completely insane. At the same time, I was also getting a divorce. There was Carlos, who wanted to stay and go down this journey. There was also Deborah Walker, who is probably the oldest Nia teacher and student that we have. She wanted to hang in there with us. And then shortly after we started developing the program, people who were interested in what we were doing started to come around, like Francois Gohard, who is still a trainer. It's one of those things where you don't know where you're going, but you know you got to go there, and I followed that voice. I knew that there was a better way. I knew that my body was telling me, doesn't that feel better? Doesn't it feel like you're getting something a little more holistic? And I did. And my body got so strong, people would say, what are you doing? Are you lifting weights? I go, nope, doing blocks, kicks, punches, strikes. It was very heavily martial art loaded in the front end. That was the first journey that I went on. And I'm glad I did. That was about precision. And it was really about learning technique, not only for survival, but technique that's really based, believe it or not, on the design of the body, so you can function with the body's greatest power. So that set off in motion. What else is out there? What other movement forms are out there? People would come up to me in class and say, have you ever thought about jazz? Have you ever thought about Duncan dance? Have you ever thought about yoga? And so these waves of wisdom and invitation to explore and discover kept coming my way. And I always said, yes, why not? Let's see what else is out there. And it wasn't until a woman was doing a little kind of documentary that she came and she said, oh, you know what you're doing? And I said, what? She said, you're blending 3 arts, martial arts, dance arts, and healing arts. And I went, I am. So I wish I could tell you that I have constructed Nia consciously. I haven't. And the most magical and functional and sacred experiences have always come from an external source that I was willing to listen to that validated what I was feeling.
Well, and I think that's one of the many things that makes Nia so magical and meaningful is from your story, it was birthed from following the breadcrumbs of the voice of spirit, of divine guidance, and that through following each little step without knowing the entirety of the big picture revealed itself and continues to reveal itself in the evolution. And that as you stepped in and followed your path and purpose, then of course you lead the way for everybody who chooses to follow that path. I'm personally so grateful for your ability to listen to that voice and then birth magic. So you shared a little bit about this, but I'd love to hear more about when you began to practice in a new way and began to integrate the martial arts and the dance arts and the healing arts in the creation of Nia. What did you begin to notice changing in your body, but also in the other realms that we would say in Nia of the mind and the emotions and the spirit? How did you notice yourself change?
I think the biggest change was to realize that there's a workout, but there's something more important. It's called a practice. And that practice, when it has a beautiful, rich philosophy, like the martial arts, to me, they do, that practice, along with that philosophy, creates a lifestyle. So you're living the work. You are becoming that thing that you're practicing. That was something that I never expected. And I got it almost immediately when I went to the dojo and realized I was on the mat practicing. What was I practicing? My craft and my technique, training my body to do what my body does naturally when it has to respond, but becoming conscious of it so that I could repeat that action so that it becomes not only conscious, but a more precise conscious action that I have greater control over. I got excited about that, and that then encouraged me mentally to answer the question, why am I doing this? Why are you doing this? And then, what are you doing? And then, how are you doing it? I never asked those questions before. Asking those questions and discovering those answers gave me great confidence, emotional confidence, to not only do what I do, but to admit when I don't know, but then have the intelligence to go out and find the answer. And that's part of the spirit component of me. I'm very comfortable from all my learning disabilities going, I don't know. I'm comfortable being the last one picked. I'm comfortable being the one getting it wrong. Because I know the other end of that. I know the other end of that is if I stick with it, as Mom said, stick with it. Do it again. Stick with it. Do it again. That I will get it. But I'll get it in my own way, and I'll get it in my own time. And rather than feeling bad about not getting it the first time, or the second time, or the third time, I know that if I can hang in there with that little Debbie spirit who walked down that street with all the traffic, I'm going to get it. So my body changed. It got more resilient. I didn't hurt anymore. I became so much more flexible. People would say, are you lifting weights? Back then, I mean, I looked chiseled. It was crazy. My mind became more focused. Everything I did became more intentional. My emotions became much more available for me to follow my heart and for me to really understand what's motivating me, what's the intrinsic motivation, and to do my own work. To not expect the world to change for me, but to do my own work. And to step towards a very high level of truth, of self-acceptance and self-knowledge and self-criticism, and knowing that's okay. And then my spirit became enlivened with wonder and with curiosity about what could be.
I'm sorry, I'm just wrapped. I love witnessing and receiving your your story, and it's very inspiring to me. And I know it has been to hundreds, thousands of Nia students who have come through your classes, come through your trainings, and then of course the classes and trainings of other teachers and trainers that have come through you. So my question is, both in the beginning, as you began to bring the creation of Nia to your classes, and the students who stayed and the students who came and all of the new people that were in your classes, what did you begin to notice in your students? And what have you noticed begins to shift in people when they practice Nia?
They were dedicated to something in their life, either as a fine artist or a writer or a martial artist or a dancer or a professor. They knew what it meant to practice something for mastery. And they were excited about that. And they didn't want to master it to be like somebody else. They wanted to master it to become themselves, to explore their greatness and their talents. People would share with me that for the first time, they got their head and their body to connect. For the first time, they felt like they could actually express themselves outside of the box they were trained to express themselves in. So the martial artist began to move a little bit more like a dancer, and the dancer began to move a little bit like the martial artist. And that movement and energy variety created a stimulation and an aliveness in people that was tangible, where their friends would say, "What are you doing? What are you doing? You're different." And the healing arts, well, everybody gravitated to, I feel better. I can move with greater ease. I'm actually able to do more than I used to do. And so I think we were all growing together. We were all learning together. We were all changing together. And that was exciting. I remember when Angela Fresconi, my dear art friend, who's no longer with us, she had studied with Jose Limon and all these. She was an amazing professional dancer. And she and I would spend hours talking about dance and movement. She's the one that said, "You've got to read this book. It's called The Thinking Body by Mabel Ellsworth Todd." It's written in the 40s, I believe. I was like, wow, how has this knowledge about the body been out there? And I haven't had privilege to it. And that set me off on a book journey like you cannot believe. I couldn't get enough of it. But having students that would come and say, "Have you ever thought about putting some jazz moves? Working with the joints is really good." And then we'd go off and do it. Or, "Have you ever thought of looking up?" That was from Elo L. Braun, who is first generation Isadora Duncan. "Have you ever thought of looking up and reaching up?" And I went, "No." And I'll tell you, the first time I did it, what came out of my mouth scared me and everybody else. I went, "Yes." Had no intention of making noise, no intention of saying a word. It was like my body and my spirit and my soul saying, "Pay attention to this and just say yes." And I did. And that was a beautiful thing, to surround yourself with seekers, to surround yourself with artists, to surround yourself with people that want to learn, that want you to tell them, "No, not like this. Okay, thank you. Tell me how." That's exciting. Those are movers and shakers. And I feel really blessed that I was able to build a community like that. And I could tell you, no one from the Bod Squad came over. There was no carryover, which was shocking to me. Zero, except for those few people I told you, Deborah. And then eventually, I think Deborah was the only one. That's incredible to me. That one person, she still owns a studio in Santa Fe, California. And Body Vibe.
So Debbie, you talked about magnetizing people who didn't want to be told what to do, but who felt compelled to seek and find themselves through Nia and through their practice. And you have With over 10,000 people completing the Nia White Belt, thousands more Nia students, thousands of Nia teachers around the world, you manifest through that magnetization all of these individual unique spirits sharing this work. And I'm curious, you've traveled the world and visited different Nia communities that have emerged from the work. What is it like for you when you witness your students and then their students and then their students sharing the work and watching it grow throughout the world?
It's extremely rewarding to that little Debbie spirit that wanted to heal people. She's so excited. And I've always felt that, Nia's this little light that attracts these moths, these butterflies, whatever it is, to that light. And it's not me. I may be a conduit to it. And I listen and I transmit it. And I have the ability to respect the light and to honor the light wisdom that I've been given and to share it. So it's a beautifully human experience. It's a very sacred experience, a very cosmic experience, another worldly experience almost. When I stand and I go, yeah, I'm seeing them again in this lifetime, but we've done this before. It always feels like that to me. And it's precious. It's a precious gift that somebody says, thank you for changing my life. What do you do with that? Mm-hmm. Except just, you're welcome. Because I don't change their life. They change their life. I've always felt Nia is self-chosen. People come, and if it doesn't fit, they leave. And that's okay. Everybody needs to find what's right for them. That's what's important.
So when you think, Debbie, of the future of the work and this being, this light that you have birthed into the world, what is your desire? What is your vision, your hope?
My hope is that the work is able to sustain itself so that truly through movement we find health, a movement experience, a practice, and a lifestyle could become something that children are taught in nursery school. That children would be given the opportunity to know that the most precious thing they own is their body, and the most important relationship they're ever going to have in their entire life is the one that they have with their body. And that the education can be given at the youth level, which will then again transform the adult level. So bottom up is my big vision, and it starts with the children. And I am hopeful that at some point we will be able to have a nonprofit side of NIA that will make it possible for this work to be shared in that way.
So I always end these interviews with the question, and using the acronym of NIA that some have used as Now I Am. So when you think about the evolution of your NIA journey, how would you finish the sentence? Through NIA or with NIA, now I am.
Curious.
Thank you, Debbie.
You're welcome.
Thank you for sharing this time with me and for sharing your story with the global NIA community. I can speak for myself, and I believe the NIA community as a whole. Thank you for all that you are and all that you bring and all that you've shared with us.
We are welcome.
And thank you all for watching this month's Community Spotlight. We will see you next time.